Welcome to the Pardoner's Guide to the Road to Canterbury. Here you'll find helpful examples of gameplay, but you won't find absolutely everything about the game here. You will still need to read the rulebook. But this guide is sure to prepare you for your pilgrimage, especially if the world of Eurogames is new to you. Before you watch this tutorial, make sure that you have already viewed the other video, which provides a general overview of the Road to Canterbury. If you haven't watched it already, it's at www.theroadtocanterbury.com. Here we're going to assume that you already know about the theme of the game, its objective, and the sordid and assorted wicked things that you have to do to succeed as a medieval pardoner. Alright, that being said, we're off. In the Road to Canterbury, each turn you will play one card and then redraw from the card supply board. Playing Relic Cards is pretty self-explanatory. You read the card out loud, perform the indicated action, and then redraw. Don't play any other cards on the same turn that you play a Relic card unless the card specifically tells you to. And remember, for the love of all that is holy, keep the knickers of St. Nicholas stowed safely beneath your saddle until absolutely needed. Playing sin cards and pardon cards is a little more involved, so let's take a closer look. You begin the game with a hand of 5 sin cards. It looks something like this hand of cards right here. In this example, it seems you've been feeling rather irritable of late. Road rage or some other such thing on the road to Canterbury has riled you up and left you feeling less than benevolent, and you feel inclined to play a sin of wrath. You remove this card from your hand and place it adjacent to any one of the 3 unfortunate pilgrims in play. After placing this sin card next to the pilgrim shown here, you immediately take one of your corruption cubes and place it on the matching sin in the circle of sin at the centre of the board, the Sin of Wrath. Congratulations! Now you have successfully tempted the friar to commit a deadly sin. None of the pilgrims have very strong willpower, so when you tempt them, they always give in. The cube you placed in the centre will record your evil doings with the Pardoner's Guild. If you mark all 7, a sinful sampler, you will receive a hefty cash reward. See the player's reference card for details. Now it's time to redraw until you have 5 cards again. The card supply board shows 3 different types of cards to choose from: sins, pardons, and relics. You are free to choose any of these, either face up, or, if you want to risk it, face down. Now, please note, you never take pilgrim cards into your hand, so to avoid embarrassment, you would better just leave those cards alone. Here you choose to draw 1 face-up card, a pardon for wrath. You add this to your hand, but you're not quite finished yet. Before you end your turn, you must refill the space now left sad and empty on the card supply board. In this case, you would draw a pardon from the top of the face-down stack and add it to the empty space. You now perform a reckoning of sin and end your turn, but, begging your pardon, we'll get to that in just a moment. First, we need to look at how to pardon a pilgrim's sins. To show how pardons work, the pilgrimage will need to make its way a bit further down the road. To play a pardon, the pardon card must match at least 1 card in play next to a pilgrim. In this example, you have decided to offer a badly needed pardon to the friar, whose favourite sin is greed. You just happen to have a pardon for greed in your hand, which allows you to pardon all sins of greed committed by 1 single pilgrim, and the friar is an excellent candidate. It appears that the friar has been a very naughty boy. He's not only been wrathful and idle, but he has also committed the sin of greed not once, but twice. Once here, shown by the Sin of Greed, and once here, as shown by the Death card. A Death card always matches the favourite sin of the pilgrim next to it. It's an example of that pilgrim sinning recreationally, without any help from you or the other pardoners. In this case, the friar's favourite sin is greed, so the Death card next to him works exactly like a Sin of Greed. Together, these 2 pardon cards add a total of 2 units of pardon value to your ledger. But wait, there's more. As a pardoner living uncomfortably close to the edge of financial ruin, You want to extort as much money as you possibly can from each of the pilgrims you pardon. If you look in the circle of sin at the centre of the game board, you will see that it is your lucky day. The parson, the little brown pawn with the delightful hat, just happens to mark the sin of greed as well. Whenever the parson denounces the same flavour of sin that you are pardoning, you receive 1 extra unit of pardon value and collect more money for it. So now you score a total of 3 units of pardon value instead of just 2. To pardon these sins and collect your reward, first mark the pardoned pilgrim with one of your corruption cubes. This cube records your corrupting influence on this pilgrim, which will become important later on when the pilgrim dies. Next, flip over each of the sins that you pardon. Because the pardon matches the sin marked by the parson in the circle of sin, also move the parson pawn clockwise 1 space to denounce a new sin. Finally, that special moment that makes you go all tingly inside has at last arrived. Collect your financial reward from the supply. The cash value of your pardon equals the total pardon value multiplied by itself, or squared. In this case, the pardon value is 3, so you collect 3 times 3, or 9 coins in total. You have proved to be quite the prodigious pardoner. Snicker with some self-satisfaction and hide these away in your big bulging bag of coins. Now, redraw and perform a reckoning of sin. And I suppose that right now would be a good time to explain just how that part of the game works. To do that, let's scoot a little bit further along the road. On this turn, the active player plays the 7th card on the friar, the deadly sin of gluttony. This gluttonous temptation simply proves to be too much for the friar's mortal frame, and this overabundant meal actually ends up being his final course. Thankfully for you, well, you just happened to be around at this pilgrim's last supper, and the other pilgrims presume that you were generously performing his last rites. So, you do. Collect the last rite token from the centre of the board as a reward for playing the 7th, or final card on a pilgrim. You can use this token to take an extra turn any time after your turn ends, including this one if you like. At the very end of the turn, after you have redrawn, perform a reckoning of sin. If any of the pilgrims in play now has 7 deadly sins next to it, that pilgrim passes away from his iniquities. In this case, the friar is officially expired. Dead. An ex-pilgrim. Examine the corruption cubes in play on this pilgrim card. The player with the most corrupting influence moves one of his cubes from the pilgrim to the next stage of the road to Canterbury, and collects the reward in coins shown there on the map. Discard all sin cards next to the deceased pilgrim, and then slide this pilgrim off the board right next to the company. This pilgrim counts as a deadly sin, so you'll have 1 less space to fill before the next pilgrim passes on. Flip this pilgrim over to avoid confusion with sin cards. Then draw a new pilgrim from the card supply board and continue the game. The game ends when the pilgrims reach their destination of Canterbury, at which point a final judgment occurs, and bonuses are awarded to the players for their corrupting influence on each company of pilgrims and on the road to Canterbury itself. See the rulebook for more details on gameplay and final scoring. May you have happy and lucrative travels along the road to Canterbury. For more information on the game, please visit www.theroadtocanterbury.com.